Welcome to radio listeners. It's not a theory anymore, it's history unfolding. The collapse of breath. 11 days ago, every environmental forecast shattered. Every model, every mitigation strategy, every emergency protocol failed, because no one predicted that the oxygen around us would simply stop being made. It began offshore. Phytoplankton, microscopic life that produced more than half of Earth's breathable air, died by the trillions, not gradually, instantly, like someone flicked a switch. Scientists rushed to label it a freak bloom collapse. But then the forests started failing. Photosynthesis stalled, trees turned red and brittle like dead coral, rainforests began to burn not by accident but because they were no longer alive enough to resist. The cause: a mutated viral strain, Virex omega. It leaked, perhaps intentionally, from a now-abandoned biogenetics facility in northern Alberta. Originally designed to accelerate algal CO2 absorption to combat climate change, Virex omega mutated, went airborne through salt vapor. It didn't just consume carbon, it stripped life. Now the air thins more every hour. Oxygen reserves have become the new gold. Entire cities run blackout cycles not for electricity but to conserve breath. New York is a hushed chaos. You can walk whole blocks and not hear a voice. Just the soft hiss of oxygen masks, the rattle of empty tanks being dragged behind wheelchairs, and the buzz of drone-delivered ration packs for the wealthy. People have stopped talking above a whisper. Even arguments have gone quiet. We're all trying to save that last lungful. To keep the signal going, please subscribe to this channel and share the videos. It helps keep the world informed. And right now, the world is suffocating. They said London would hold. They said the city was resilient. But they forgot resilience still needs to breathe. The East End fell first. What began as a line for portable oxygen refills outside Bethnal Green Hospital turned into a street war within minutes. A father punched a medic for skipping his daughter's name on the list. The medic collapsed not from the punch but from oxygen starvation. His mask had ruptured hours earlier. By sundown, the streets were filled with bodies, not from bullets, not from fire, from collapse. Asphyxiation is quiet. It's not like in the movies. You don't scream, you don't thrash, you kneel, you reach for your throat, you try to breathe air that isn't there. And then you're gone. Across the city, makeshift oxygen markets now operate behind steel doors. 4 minutes of clean air cells for more than a week's wages, if wages still mattered. Currency now is measured in liters, not pounds. This morning, Parliament sealed its doors to the public. They're calling it secure governance. We call it what it is: inhaled betrayal. Before they went silent, someone sprayed red paint across Big Ben's base. We're not dying for a flag, we're dying for your experiment. I'm watching London sink beneath a glass dome of silence. Not from war, not from plague, from the absence of breath. Marlowe's next. He was at the Clark Quay shelters yesterday. He saw what's happening in the human heart. Clark Quay used to be alive: music, street performers, tourists, food stalls, laughter echoing over the river. Today I saw a woman, perhaps 30, maybe younger, kneel beside a wheezing stray dog. She removed her own oxygen mask and gently strapped it over the dog's snout. She smiled and whispered, "You don't deserve to go like this." Then she sat beside it. She never put the mask back on, she just closed her eyes and waited. I don't know her name, but I'll never forget how her hand stayed on that dog's paw. The temples are full now. Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, Taoist. The gods don't seem to care where the prayers come from anymore, and they're not praying for miracles. They're praying for a painless ending, a gentle fade, a quiet moment, a final breath that doesn't scream. Couples are getting married inside oxygen tents. There's a mural in Tanjong Pagar where children have started painting themselves under blue skies, skies they'll never see again. One boy, maybe 5, drew a tree, not green, silver. Underneath he wrote, "This is the tree that will save us. It makes air even when we forget how." There are no saviors, only each other and the quiet gasp that tells us we're still here. Until we're not, this just came in. A leaked World Health Organization memo confirms what we feared. The viral agent responsible for collapsing phytoplankton and triggering global forest death, Virex omega, was not created by terrorists, nor by a rogue state. It was engineered by a joint Canadian-American research facility, under Genesis Corps, a corporate military initiative funded to develop accelerated carbon cycle repair. Virex omega was meant to bind and neutralize atmospheric CO2 using lab-grown algae agents. But during an offshore deployment test, the strain mutated in ocean vapor and became a global bioreactor, binding not carbon but chlorophyll. Within 48 hours, it shut down 93% of oceanic oxygen production. A week later, the forests began to starve. Now they rot from the inside, failing to photosynthesize, drying out, igniting at the faintest spark. The leak also revealed this. Genesis Corps delayed public disclosure by 2 days, long enough to transport their executive staff and families to sealed bioshelters beneath Greenland and Arizona. They knew. And they saved themselves first. No word yet from official governments. But several national servers across Europe have gone dark. We may be entering the phase where blame no longer matters, because there's no one left to answer for it. You'd think the enemy would be the virus. You'd think this would be the moment of unity. That nations would come together to fight for the breath of the world. No, they're fighting for what's left. India accuses Canada of weaponizing climate tech. Canada blames outsourced private labs based in the US. The US says China pushed a version of Virex years earlier in black market trials. China has sealed its borders and moved oxygen convoys underground, literally. And the Amazon, the last lung of Earth, has become a war zone. Marlo Mercer, we're all keeping it together on the mic, but tell me you're seeing the same thing, that this collapse isn't just physical, it's spiritual. Yeah, Quinn. We're seeing the same down to the bones. In Manhattan, the high-rise oxygen fortresses have finally fallen. Up until yesterday, the ultra-rich, the finance kings, the venture rats, had turned their towers into sealed air sanctuaries. UV scrubbers, imported filters, private reserves, some even hired former Navy SEALs to guard their elevators. But here's the thing about suffocation, it finds the cracks. Someone disabled the intake system at the Stassen Spire, the tallest of the clean towers. Within an hour, over 300 residents were dead or unconscious. A few dozen survivors made it down, masks torn, claw marks on their faces where others had fought for them. Now the towers are silent. Looters didn't even try to climb them. What's the point? The rich gambled they could buy time. They bought a few extra days, but they couldn't buy air. And now the streets below are filled with their leftovers. Quinn, I think we're all realizing something awful here. This collapse, it's leveling the species. No gods, no kings, only lungs. This is Amina Bakri reporting from what's left of the Cairo Continental Atmospheric Hub. At 8:45 this morning, the African Union initiated its final attempt to restore regional oxygen production. A machine called the Ether Core. A towering filtration turbine system meant to simulate artificial photosynthesis using captured algae strains. It ran for 9 minutes, then it exploded. The blast ripped through the Nile's edge. A cloud of red vapor flooded the area. Hundreds are missing, thousands evacuated. What's worse, early reports suggest the core's failure may have released a viral payload dormant in its coolant system. Locals are calling it the red fog. We don't know if it spreads, we don't know if it kills, but we do know this: Africa's best chance just suffocated itself. Back to you in New York. We've talked about riots, looting, collapse. But let's talk about what doesn't get filmed. I walked past a cafe today, one of the last with a working air tank in Chinatown, 10 chairs, 9 occupied, all with masks. The 10th was empty, but next to it was a folded note perfectly placed. My breath should go to someone else. No name, no waiting for thanks. Just gone. In Tokyo, reports say over 40,000 people walked into the sea yesterday. Peacefully, silently, as a group. They called it the Surrender March. The tide didn't rise to meet them, they just kept walking. And in Sao Paulo, underground clubs have begun hosting what they call last beats. Music, dancing. Full oxygen flow, you pay your final money and party until the tank runs dry. It's not just suicide, it's choice. Some want to be remembered laughing, some giving, some just disappearing quietly so others can keep breathing a little longer. Mercer, Quinn, if you're still upright after this next rotation, I've got something for segment 13 you'll want to hear. A whisper from Greenland. Something S coming out of Greenland. Not a rescue, not a cure, a confession. We received a coded transmission 6 hours ago, traced to a deep-buried bioshelter beneath the Greenland ice sheet. A man identifying himself as Dr. Ethan Mirage, a former Genesis Corps research head. Here's what he said unfiltered. There was a failsafe, it wasn't deployed, because activating it would have cost them their shelters. He claims Genesis Corps developed a counteragent, an oxygen-producing synthetic spore. But to work, it had to be dispersed from orbital altitude, and that would have meant sacrificing their supply shuttles they later used to escape. They chose their lives over ours. Dr. Mirage says he stayed behind. He watched the final decision get approved. He said we could have stabilized the oxygen curve by day 3. Now it's exponential decay, unstoppable unless they change course. We've tried to reach the shelter again. No response, the irony. Greenland used to be called the last wild breath of Earth. Now it's a vault of silence. Quinn, your turn. If there's any truth left in Europe, now's the time to drag it up. They've gone underground, literally. Across Central Europe, from Bavaria to Geneva, the ruling class has disappeared beneath the surface. Not into bunkers, into air vaults. We're receiving verified footage from German train tunnels now converted into pressurized oxygen cities. Civilians left outside the gates. Security patrols equipped with carbon guns, weapons designed to rupture filtration tanks with a single shot. In Geneva, the last public oxygen bank was looted, not by desperate civilians but by private security firms. Not for redistribution, for relocation. A former Swiss banker, one of the few whistleblowers still breathing, told me this. They always said we were building these vaults for nuclear war. Turns out they were just castles in the air. Meanwhile, outside the Chernberg entrance, hundreds of children sleep on gravel wrapped in foil blankets next to signs that say, "Just 1 hour, please." No answer, just sealed steel. These aren't bunkers, they're air kingdoms. And the peasants have already suffocated. Marlow, what's left where you are? They're calling it the reclamation, a movement, a belief. A final scream against extinction. In Penang and Johor, new faith groups are burning their own oxygen tanks in public plazas, saying breath belongs to the earth, not to man. I watched a crowd of 20 ignite their own masks. Sparks flew into the night like fireflies. They stood in a circle chanting, "Air was a gift, we returned it in peace." They suffocated together, arms linked, eyes closed. A soft moan swept through the street as people knelt beside their still warm bodies, not in protest, in respect. Elsewhere, cults calling themselves the Exhaled roam the streets offering release ceremonies. A mercy service for those without tanks. A whispered goodbye. A gentle sedative before the air takes you. It's horrifying and it's beautiful. People reclaiming death on their own terms, not hiding, not begging, just accepting. But Mercer, there's a new voice coming from your side. Go ahead. This is Marcos Vale reporting from outside Manaus. The lungs of the earth are burning. For the past 48 hours, the Amazon rainforest has been under bombardment. Not from nature, from humanity. U.S. and Canadian forces attempted a coordinated atmospheric reclamation mission using orbital dispersal drones to spray the canopy with biozygen agents. Brazilian defense units intercepted the drones, shot down 37, launched targeted EMP blasts at the strike teams. The result, a complete shutdown of jungle life. And then the fires began, fires ignited by accident. Fueled by dry rot, lightning, desperation. The smoke now reaches as far as Lima. The death toll, unknown, because no one can breathe long enough to count. A Brazilian general was quoted off record, "We have oxygen, we don't have peace." This was supposed to be the last green place. It's black now. Quinn, Marlow, Mercer. The world's last oxygen war has begun. Over to you. The Mexican-American border has sealed, not for immigration, for air control, U.S. Drones now patrol every half-mile, equipped with heat sensors and O2 breach alarms, designed to detect high-output respiration from large groups. Anything over 10 bodies in a zone gets flagged. This morning, 2 buses of oxygen refugees, mostly elderly and children, were found abandoned in the Arizona desert. Every tank inside was dry. All 58 passengers dead. A handwritten note on the driver's seat read, "We were told there was enough." There was. FEMA has deployed air reserve zones in the Rockies, temporary shelters with 12-hour air cycles. First come, first served. Only those under 30 allowed. Older generations are not being admitted. They call it preservation allocation. I call it what it is, euthanasia by bureaucracy. Marlow, I hope Singapore is still standing, because here the cities are starting to kneel. There's no noise anymore in the metro stations, only the sound of controlled, conscious breathing. In Station B7, someone has written on every stair in red ink, "Slow breath is long life." When the train stopped, the shelters below became orphan zones. Parents sent their children down, left them with 1 or 2 tanks and a story, "We'll be right back." But no one comes back anymore. The children have grown silent. They don't cry, they just breathe long, slow, trained breaths. I met a boy named Ezra, 7 years old. He asked if I wanted to trade air, not food, not water. Air. He pulled out a balloon, half full, sealed, labeled Tuesday. He keeps balloons, 1 per day, he says. It's his calendar now. I didn't cry, I didn't dare. Tears burn more oxygen than words. Mercer, tell me there's still something left in the Americas. Brooklyn fell today, not to war, not to fire. Not even to collapse, to air failure. NYC's Eastern O2 grid ran dry at 08:13 this morning. Backup tanks had been stolen the night before during a raid, no suspects. no guards survived. When the signal went out, the hospitals died first. A nurse called into our emergency relay. She said the patients didn't panic, they just let go, the buildings are still standing. But they're filled with ghosts. And in Midtown, the skyscrapers have gone black. Entire offices with airlocked glass floors, now silent. Some contain the frozen bodies of executives who locked their chambers too late. Above it all, the Empire State Building remains lit. A single red beacon. Someone rigged a solar feed to keep it flashing. I think it's a heartbeat, or a tombstone. Quinn, are there any cities left still fighting? Paris has fallen. Not to suffocation, but to order. Last night, the French military declared state control over every oxygen production facility in Western Europe under Directive Clairvaux. All local governance suspended. No civilian input. No elections, no press. Tanks now patrol the streets of Lyon. Drones hover above Marseille. The new government's motto, Oxygène est pouvoir. Oxygen is power. Reports indicate civilians in Paris are being issued daily air rations in coin-sized tanks. 3 breaths per person per hour. Those who resist are removed. A leaked video showed a group of protesters, unarmed, singing La Marseillaise as they were dragged into black transports. Masks ripped off, no return. The footage ended on a wall tagged with 3 words, Liberté expirée, freedom expired. Marlowe, are there any places left untouched by this? Quinn, interrupting with a live report out of Indonesia. Jakarta is burning, but not from fire, from friction. Multiple factions, remnants of government loyalists, private oxygen brokers, and armed separatist air gangs have collapsed into full-scale civil war. This morning, the city's last oxygen processing facility, once owned by Astro Breath Corp, was stormed by 3 competing militias. But they didn't fight for the plant, they fought inside it, rupturing main lines, exposing canisters. Igniting a chain reaction. The entire block is now a choking inferno. Over 10,000 presumed dead, no survivors recovered. The suburbs collapsed inward. Masses of people trying to find pockets of clean air dying in place, lined up like pilgrims at a shrine that no longer gives. An anonymous call reached our Jakarta relay. A man coughing barely audible, no sides left, only lungs and guns. Mercer, it's a global suffocation, and it's not slowing down. In the Rockies, a new government initiative has surfaced. They call them rest clinics. But the reality is far more brutal. These are oxygen-assisted euthanasia centers. Soft beds, music, one final breath, clean, crisp, and terminal. The clinics claim it's for the old, the terminal, the exhausted. But this morning we received images, children inside, people under 30, many without any terminal condition. Why? Because each rest frees up 12 hours of breathable air for someone else. This is no longer triage, it's sacrifice by algorithm. A woman left a note taped to the clinic door. I give my breath to my son, use it well. New York is talking about opening its own centers soon. Death won't be a failure, it'll be an act of contribution. Quinn, Marlowe, tell me we haven't reached that point everywhere. We've just received confirmation. The Republic of Ireland has sealed its borders, airspace, land, and sea. The Irish Parliament held its final emergency session last night and voted to sever all international contact. Their last message to the UN was chillingly brief. We cannot breathe for the world. Naval patrols now guard every approach to the island. Drones intercept civilian vessels attempting to cross from the UK. But the most shocking news. Ireland has stabilized its oxygen rate, using wind scrubbers along the western coast, and a radical bow of synthetic kelp. They claim to have achieved breathable sustainability for a limited population. But that word, limited, is key. Outside Ireland's western shores, hundreds of boats now float aimlessly. Thousands of refugees waiting for mercy they'll never receive. Locals report hearing constant broadcasts from coastal towers. Do not land, do not approach. This air is ours. They call it the last green island. It's not sanctuary, it's survival, behind locked doors. Marlowe, are there any other corners of the world showing signs of air balance? No tanks, no suits, no riots. And yet still alive, in the mountains of Bhutan. A monastery continues to broadcast a low-band radio signal. A mantra repeated every 5 minutes in 23 languages. Breathe slowly, love without panic, leave quietly. Reports suggest fewer than 200 monks remain. They've chosen not to flee, not to build oxygen domes, but to adapt. They've trained since the first days of the collapse, reducing oxygen consumption through hours-long meditation. Shared tanks, shared breath. One clip sent from a hiker's dying phone shows two monks sitting on a peak, masks resting on their knees, just watching the mist roll in. They do not fear death. They call it returning breath to the world. But even peace has predators. This morning, the Bhutanese mountain route was overrun by survivalist mercenaries. They stormed the monastery, took the tanks, set the library ablaze. A monk was heard whispering live on comms. They stole our breath but not our silence. Then the line went dead. Quinn Mercer, there's nothing sacred left. We have a fresh wave of horror from the American heartland. The Mississippi River, once a lifeline, is now a floating grave. Over the past 72 hours, hundreds of barges, rafts, and makeshift boats have been drifting south from Missouri, Illinois, and beyond. Families fleeing air-dead cities. Some hope to reach Louisiana oxygen hubs. Others just drifted, hoping the wind would carry breathable air downstream. Instead, they found starvation, dehydration, suffocation. Our field relay near Baton Rouge intercepted dozens of distress calls. We're out. We need anything. Please, anything. But the ports are closed. Oxygen reserves are locked. The military guards them with absolute orders. Those vessels were refused entry, left to rot in the current. One drone image shows over 150 boats clumped together motionless, bodies slumped on decks, masks half on, children pressed against hulls, eyes open. Locals are calling it the choke armada. No shots fired. No bombs dropped. Just the slow, steady smothering of 10,000 souls on water. She called herself Luna, a pirate radio operator in Rio de Janeiro, broadcasting from an abandoned carnival float warehouse. She'd been on air for 12 days straight. Music, poems, personal letters from families long gone, no politics, no panic, just human voices. I heard her for the first time this morning. She was crying softly between songs. A child's lullaby played on a broken ukulele. And then she said, "If anyone's still listening, it's not over until we stop singing, and I'm not done yet." But halfway through the next track, she began coughing hard, deep. You could hear her crawling. The mic fell. Then silence, no music, no whisper, just wind against the microphone, a soft, grainy hum. That was 5 hours ago. She hasn't returned. But we're still transmitting her frequency. Because sometimes the last thing people need to hear is a voice, even if it's fading. Quinn, your turn, we have it. An intercepted classified document. Origin, Beijing. Confirmed by 3 independent sources. The virus that decimated Earth's oxygen cycle was man-made, originally designed as a bioweapon, targeting the respiratory systems of enemy crops and algae farms. It mutated in containment due to improper disposal. At a submerged test site in the Yellow Sea, the final failure came during a monsoon surge. Breach, spread, airborne contamination, global distribution, 19 days. The Chinese government knew, so did 3 other major nations. None acted. Instead, they built bunkers, stockpiled air. The cover-up was airtight until now. The document ends with a handwritten note. We made war against air. Then now air has won. More soon, but for now this much is clear. There was a moment we could have stopped it. We let it pass. Mount Sinai ran out of oxygen today. All major hospitals in New York are now classified as non-breathable zones. No tanks, no power, no staff left to turn patients. We received audio from a nurse. Her name was Issa. She barricaded herself in the pediatric wing with 20 infants, each with half a tank. You could hear the beeps slowing. One by one, her final message. They don't know what's happening, they just want to be held. She stayed with them, she didn't make it. Now city morgues are sealed, no transport, no refrigeration. Dead bodies are being wrapped and stacked in oxygen shelters to conserve air for the living. An NYPD officer told me, "We're using the dead as insulation. Death is no longer separate, it's part of the resource strategy." Let Quinn take it from here, tell us what remains. The Eurotunnel has collapsed, not from sabotage, not from quake, from pressure. Tens of thousands fled mainland Europe, rushing into the channel with modified masks and makeshift tanks. But halfway through, the compression system failed. No backup, no second chance. People weren't crushed physically. Their lungs imploded, screams never finished. Now the tunnel is a mass grave. Wall-to-wall with bodies and shattered canisters. French and British officials point fingers. The Prime Minister released this cold statement. "We warned them, we cannot carry the whole continent." I saw a man on the northern beach of Dover this morning. He was holding a child's toy, staring at the sea when I asked if he was waiting for someone. He said, "No, I'm waiting to forgive myself." I didn't ask more across Asia. The old bullet trains still run, but no one is driving them. Decommissioned lines have been hijacked remotely by desperate groups. The cars are sealed, families strapped in, children taped with rebreathers. They launch them blindly. No stops, no destinations, only hope. Most derail, some vanish. One train was found this morning, 90 kilometers outside Chiang Mai, empty, doors sealed, not a soul inside. Only a cassette tape still playing, a woman's voice soft. We did everything we could, we gave them speed, not safety. And prayed the wind would be kind. They call them ghost trains, and at night, we still hear them pass. No lights, no brakes, only echoes. New York didn't die in silence, it screamed. This morning, thousands gathered in Times Square. Some to protest, some to pray, some just to witness the fall. No weapons, just signs, songs, and tanks. At 9:42 a.m., the final citywide oxygen alarm sounded. Zero grid reserves, people didn't run, they sang. They lit flares, burned money, luxury clothes, stock certificates, declared air is the only wealth. A child held a placard, I forgive you. Then the coughing began, and within minutes, the square fell silent. A drone camera captured the scene. Bodies in a perfect spiral. As if choreographed, no riot, no chaos, just breath leaving. World leaders no longer meet, they accuse. From behind sealed screens and private domes. And now, the last war has begun, not for land, not for oil, but for air corridors. They say this is the final world war. It lasts until the last breath, and no one wins. In the hills north of Hanoi, former students bioengineers tried to restart life. They created breathing gardens, viable phytoplankton fused with moss, enough to keep 2 people breathing if the wind stayed still. 12 families were invited, only one remains. A child named Keen, age 9, sleeps beside the largest moss bubble, holding a faded photo of the ocean. His father left a voice message, we destroyed the sea. Now we ask it to forgive us. Berlin has gone dark. No drones, no diplomats, just a satellite photo black within the ringbond. A final post from a UN envoy read, we've bartered down to seconds, people are selling exhalations. They tried everything. Synthetic leaves, saltwater turbines, nothing worked. Now they call it the last song of the Reich. It's not music, it's the sound of a nation exhaling one last time. It was supposed to be salvation. A private aerospace venture launched the Ether Arc. A self-sustaining orbital habitat for 300 elites. It barely cleared the stratosphere. A propulsion glitch. A fire suppression error. The air inside consumed in seconds. It fell. Over South Carolina. Witnesses saw it break apart like a star. The founder's last broadcast, a single cough. The sky is full of corpses now, the earth won't let them go. There was hope. In Iceland, a summit, 14 nations. A unified oxygen reserve, AI managed. Fare distributed 3 hours after signing. The Reykjavik facility was bombed. All dead. Someone painted on a subway wall, breathe till 26. But here on this broadcast, we don't lie to you, we keep speaking. Even as the air gets thin. Marlowe, let's not let silence win. A choir is singing in soul, not in a bunker, not in a church, but in the street. One note. Passed from person to person, held as long as lungs allow. A soldier joined them, then another. Now the song echoes through the city. Their final message painted on the plaza, when the lungs fail, let the soul speak. Washington, D.C. has fallen. The White House oxygen dome collapsed today. Civilians inside, hundreds suffocated. The president had already evacuated to Nevada. Her final message, we are no longer governing, only grieving. The Capitol steps are now filled with the breathless. Wrapped in plastic not as protesters, but as orphans of air. A woman came to the embassy dragging a pink suitcase. Inside, 4 oxygen tanks, used, cleaned. Each had carried her child one more day. She said nothing, just left the case. Tucked beneath the last tank, a drawing, a family holding hands in a green field. The sun was blue, and 5 words, breathe again, maybe not today. This may be the last time I speak, so let me say something without noise. Just names. Julian, 14, from Riyadh, held his sister as she slept. Anita, 68, from Delhi, taught children to make paper masks. Salmon Lee, Cape Town, built a rooftop greenhouse. Atoma, from a Ukrainian bunker, said, I forgive the sky. Malik from Detroit gave his final tank to a stranger. You are not forgotten. And for those still breathing, still listening, you are part of a story that mattered. This isn't just the end of oxygen, it's the end of forgetting what connection feels like. I stepped outside for this. There's barely an hour left in the tanks. The sky isn't blue, not gray, just pale like parchment, no birds, no insects. Even the wind is tired, but in the distance. A child is running, no mask, no tank, just joy, as if pretending there's still air to laugh with. Maybe there is, maybe the earth remembers how, and if not, if this is truly the end of breath, then let this moment matter. We spoke, we told the truth, we shared the fall, and we never turned off the signal. But if you're hearing this, and you believe stories should outlast silence, subscribe, keep the voice alive, so when the air returns, someone will still be here to hear it. Radio listeners signing off.